After an abrupt exit to his 2021 NFL season, how confident should Dynasty owners be in Calvin Ridley headed into 2022? Let's find out. What's up, everybody? Nate Liss back with you again, and this time to break down all things Calvin Ridley. But before I do, I have a big announcement to make on this show right here. Ladies and gentlemen of my audience, I want to announce publicly for the first time that in a not so distant future, I will be launching DynastyRankings.com. This website will be the home to all of my future rankings, tools, premium content, and of course, much, much more than that. I can promise you that this website will be unlike any other Dynasty rankings service. And if you'd like to find out just how much, plus receive exclusive fantasy nuggets from me personally, then go to the site right now and enter your email to start receiving content today. Go ahead. I'll wait. And as an added bonus, the first 100 people to get their emails entered will be entered to win one of our first off-the-line Dynasty Rankings hoodies, as you can see right here. Or right here. I don't know where I'm going to put it. And lastly, guys, if you enjoy the content, hit like. Of course, comment below. I interact with everybody who does. And consider subscribing so that you guys don't miss any of the content that I continue to put out, whether it's Discord giveaways or shorts or brand new full-length videos just like this. It helps me a ton, and I'd love to get this in front of a greater and greater audience. So do me that favor, subscribe today. Now, I didn't want to do this, but you guys forced me to do it. Well, to be honest with you, the crowd in the Discord chat forced me to do this. Everything in my life was going perfectly. And then I asked on our Dynasty Discord group who they wanted me to do a video about next. And all I received was comments about Calvin Ridley. Do you think he's coming back? Is Ridley a buy low? Should I send a 2022 first round rookie pick for him? You made me do this. And for those of you not in the Discord chat yet, what are you waiting for? I have tossed a link in the description below. Come join hundreds and hundreds of other really active Dynasty players, as well as myself, and take advantage of our free public chat and trade channels, as well as Discord giveaways. Who was I talking about? Oh, right. So the reality is that if you owned or invested in Calvin Ridley last season, he didn't help you win in any leagues whatsoever. And his 5 games played in 2021 was the least of any of the consensus top 20 Dynasty wide receivers last season, except Juju Smith-Schuster. But let's all just admit one thing right now. While we're all in the trust tree or truth circle or whatever the this is, Calvin Ridley's popularity has been kept alive by a top 4 fantasy season that took place 2 years ago in 2020. And it was a legit fantasy season. He averaged 18.8 fantasy points per game. He was number 1 in air yards, number 1 in deep targets, number 2 in red zone targets, number 1 in completed air yards, number 1 in unrealized air yards, number 7 in yards per route run, number 7 in total targets, number 10 in target share, number 4 in receiving yards, number 11 in receptions, number 9 in total touchdowns. It was so legit, in fact, that a year later, when we reached early September of 2021, his Dynasty rank had climbed all the way to the wide receiver 3 overall. So what went wrong? Well, we all know that Calvin Ridley stepped away from football after week 7 of 2021 for personal reasons. But it's what we saw in his game prior to the abrupt exit that actually concerns me. Now, it's impossible to say if the decline we saw from Ridley during his 4th season in the NFL was regression or related to the mental health issues that he experienced. I don't know. I'm not qualified to speak on this. I'm not a doctor. Or am I? No, I'm not a doctor. But based on what we saw from him in 2020, I'd be willing to wager a lot of this one on the personal issues and not the lack of talent in the player. Yet this doesn't change the fact that Ridley's numbers flat out stunk in 2021. And here were how some of the most important ones stacked up against his historic 2020 season. His yards per route run fell from the wide receiver 7 to the wide receiver 76. His average depth of target fell from wide receiver 11 to wide receiver 62. His fantasy points per target fell from the wide receiver 32 to the wide receiver 102. His expected points added fell from wide receiver 9 to wide receiver 76, and his receiving yards per game dropped by 35 total yards. Now, some of you are probably screaming at your screens right now, but Ridley averaged 14.2 fantasy points per game. Easy. Look, I'm well aware of the fact, and believe it or not, those 14.2 fantasy points per game were actually top 25 numbers. The problem, though, is that all this came on the backbone of inefficient advanced metrics and immense target share. What he did in 2021 was so Travis Fulgham in 2020. 10 targets per game, monster air yardage share, and then a total turd emoji in the advanced metrics department. As well as each of these guys being complete zeros after the catch, even at their absolute best. And then these same people in one breath screaming about Calvin Ridley's fantasy points per game, in the next breath start screaming about how Matt Ryan wasn't any good last season. He only averaged 13.1 fantasy points per game. It's true, Matt Ryan's 13.1 fantasy points per game were so abysmal that it was actually the exact same amount of points per game that we saw from Sam Darnold and just one more fantasy point per game than Baker Mayfield. But I've got bad news for you guys. Matt Ryan actually looked a lot better last season than he even did during Calvin Ridley's top 4 season. Because Matt Ryan's pass protection actually got worse last season, but still during that time we witnessed his accuracy rise into the top 10, his true completion percentage reached top 11 levels, his deep ball completion percentage climbed 15 spots into the top 3, as well as another 15 position climb in his pressured completion percentage, which was into the top 4. So none of this is really Matt Ryan's fault at all, actually. He targeted Ridley heavily, he supercharged his air yards, and he was highly accurate. But Ridley was just less effective with the ball in his hand. And this was where my concern came into play as a Dynasty owner. I can deal with injuries, and I can deal with variance, but the minute you start asking me to guess what's going on between someone's ears, I'm out. And you don't have to invest in Calvin Ridley at all. In fact, I just ran a simple poll on Twitter, and I focused on the 2 players that are most closely ranked in value to Calvin Ridley, and I asked the people, who do you prefer? And here is how they responded. Let's pull this up. Based on this poll, which faced Calvin Ridley head-to-head against Amari Cooper and Mike Evans, the crowd still clearly favors Ridley and his uncertain future. For me, this poll should have clearly gone the direction of Amari Cooper, though. For starters, they're basically the same age, which means they're entering their age 27, age 28 seasons. But with Cooper, the immediate fact is that we know he's playing in 2022, and not all of it may be in Dallas. Part of the anti-Amari Cooper rhetoric is based on the fact that he's surrounded by talent in every direction in Dallas. Yet despite this, Amari Cooper continues to post top 30 with wide receiver 1 weeks sprinkled in. This is the type of player I would try to trade Calvin Ridley for, or instead of making a run at Ridley, look at in particular. I mean, owners who bought Ridley in 2021 already experienced a lost year. Do people in 2022 really want to navigate the same issue? Because my Dynasty rosters cannot afford it. But again, focusing on keep trade cuts data, there appears to be a light at the end of the tunnel for Calvin Ridley owners. As you can see, his current Dynasty value is just barely ahead of a late 2022 first-round pick, but just slightly behind a late 2023 first-round pick. But what you love to see is the other names filtered around him in terms of crowdsourced comps. For those contending rosters not looking to get put over a barrel, what does that even mean? Anyways, players like Keenan Allen are still insanely good values. Allen boasts one of the league's most solid fantasy track records, as well as a style of play that should continue to age well. In fact, Allen hasn't seen less than 137 targets in the last 5 seasons. He's had over 100 receptions in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and his per-game fantasy output has hardly changed over that same span of time, as his current 5-year fantasy point per game average is still sitting at around 17 fantasy points per game. If you like Michael Thomas, you should love Keenan Allen. And if you can get 2 or more years out of Allen as he crests into his age 32, 33 season, I would take that all day over the guessing game that is Calvin Ridley. Now, for the rebuilders, what should stand out most to you is Brandon Ayuk on this list. Still just 23 years old in one of the league's most explosive offenses and commanded the strongest target share over the final 8 weeks of the NFL regular season. With Deebo Samuel always an injury concern week to week, we could see Ayuk not only thrive in a Deebo Samuel offense, but also go nuclear in one without him. It's not often that a player who finished top 20 as a rookie and performed solidly in year 2 gets dismissed this hard, but this is a material world and something about a material girl. So for Dynasty gamers racking their brains over whether or not to chase the Calvin Ridley dragon, I say don't do it. The value is certainly far more important than the allure of a season that happened 2 years ago. And if I can turn my Calvin Ridley assets into any of the players I listed above or even future rookie picks, I am all over that.